Case File Number 001. Title: The First Encounter with Fear. Classification: Prehistoric Psychological. Primary question: what scared us before monsters had names? Focus: fear is instinct. Fear is myth. Imagine being alive before language. No words for danger. No stories to warn you. No way to explain what your body already knows. When the sun disappears and the dark moves closer, fear doesn't ask permission. This is where it begins. Fear wasn't always an emotion. Before humans could speak, fear was instinct. A reflex that moved faster than thought. The body reacted before the mind could question it. Heart racing, muscles tightening. A sudden certainty that something was wrong, even when nothing could be seen. For early humans, fear didn't need proof. It only needed possibility. Before we ever told stories, before we carved symbols into stone, before we had words for fear, we were already afraid. The first monsters didn't have names. They didn't need them. They lived on instinct, in memory, in the dark spaces just beyond the firelight. For early humans, fear wasn't entertainment. It was survival. And the first monster was very, very real. The majority of our evolutionary history revolved around one thing: survival. Our ancestors lived in caves, humble huts, and even amongst the trees. They walked with little to no clothing, hunted and gathered everything that they ate. They were vulnerable in every sense of the word. For them, something was always lurking, not just hunting, but waiting, watching. One of the biggest predators, however, was the nightfall itself. A darkness that possessed our ancestors with uncertainty, fear, and absolute vulnerability. To the prehistoric mind, darkness wasn't empty. It was full of movement, full of sound, full of things just beyond reach. When vision disappears, the mind fills in the gaps, and imagination is never neutral. This is why the dark still feels alive, why even now, silence can feel crowded. The animals who hunted our ancestors were stealthy, skilled carnivores who knew where to hide to catch their next meal. Some of the sounds our ancestors heard were real, and they knew that. You see, there were numerous beasts that lived in prehistoric times that we no longer shared the world with. Some we may never discover. Some we will never fully understand. The ones we do know, however, are terrifying even to the modern mind. Saber-toothed tigers, cave lions, giant ground sloths, glyptodons. To be human was to be watched and hunted. It is here that the imagination begins to sharpen its teeth. The terrifying creatures that roamed outside, not only in the dark, but in broad daylight, were real. But fear doesn't stop at reality. It enlarges it. Eyes glow brighter, teeth grow longer, movement becomes deliberate, intelligent even. What began as an animal became something more, something bigger, something that felt intentional, something mythical. 44,000 years ago in Indonesia, a painting was created in the safety of a cave. Etched into limestone on the island of Sulawesi, it is the oldest known form of figurative rock art. The image depicts part human, part animal figures hunting with spears. These are not animals. They are not quite human. They are something in between. This suggests something profound. Our ancestors didn't just fear predators. They imagined beings that resembled themselves. Because the most frightening thing is something that looks almost human. 4,000 years later, in the Stadelhole im Holmstein cave in Germany, we find that a man is carving a sculpture out of mammoth ivory with a flintstone knife. The sculpture depicts a lion man. The sculpture has the head of a lion, a long-shaped body, and arms that appear as hind legs. It represents the human form by standing in the upright position, with human legs and feet. There are similar statues across the world depicting a creature that is half animal, half human, that was created in the ancient world. In Las Cartas cave in Asturias, Spain, a female figurine with a deer head was more than likely created with similar tools as the Stadelhole model. Another similar model is found in ancient Egypt, where Sekhmet, the warrior goddess, is depicted with the body of a female and the head of a lion. Additionally, in ancient Egypt, the Great Sphinx, originally built in around the 26th century BCE, has a human head on a lion's body. Additionally, a few other creatures that were found to be depicted at the time include griffins, the Leviathan, Zhangyao, the Naga, and the Garuda. Griffins were first depicted in ancient Persian, Egyptian, and Greek art in the 4th millennium BCE. They are humanity's oldest hybrid mythical creatures. These half-lion, half-raptor creatures appeared in tombs, on cylinder seals, and even in the throne room at the Palace of Knossos. Though they were depicted in the form of art, they would not be written about until the 7th century BCE. The Leviathan is a creature of pure, horrific terror. It is a colossal, primordial sea creature that is mentioned in the Bible, more specifically in the book of Job. The creature is said to have been a formidable, armored creature with an untamable power. The Leviathan is usually depicted as a sea serpent or crocodile and existed in the 3rd millennium BCE. The Sangyao is a savage, gluttonous, giant snake-like creature with 9 heads that was birthed from Chinese mythology. This creature is known for its capability to spew poison that makes the land around it barren and uninhabitable. The earliest writings of the Sangyao appeared around the 3rd century BCE. The Naga are a divine half-serpent being that are shapeshifters who occasionally take human or part human form. They are known as dragons or even water spirits amongst Indian cultures. These creatures first appeared around 1500 BCE and are still worshipped today. The Garuda are bird-like creatures that are also revered to be divine eagle-human hybrids. This divine creature was known as the King of Birds and symbolizes birth, heaven, speed, and strength. Like the Naga, they also originated around 1500 BCE in India, and they are also still worshipped today. There is no archaeological evidence that points to where such mythical creatures came from. We can only assume that our ancient ancestors may have misinterpreted what already existed. Just like us, it is highly probable that the ancient peoples found dinosaur fossils, which allowed their imaginations to run wild. Imagine finding fossils of a creature you have never seen before. It would be extremely difficult to imagine what this creature looked like, especially when the fossils may not have been entirely intact. Without modern technology, our ancestors had no idea what they were looking at. All that they could see was a creature with large teeth and a body of unimaginable size. They would not have necessarily known that this creature no longer existed. Just because it was not encountered daily does not mean that it was extinct in their minds. There were always predators hiding, waiting. So these facts alone allowed for the mind to run wild and for stories to be told. Of course, there were also creatures that were discovered that they didn't know existed. While walking amongst the desert, the woods, the jungles, anything was possible. And so many creatures and beings had yet to be discovered. After all, it is normal to exaggerate what you have never seen before. Seeing something new provides elements of mystery and fear-induced curiosity. You see, the brain is used to a routine. Even in ancient times, they were used to a sense of normalcy, being amongst the same people, animals, and creatures almost every day. When seeing something different or unfamiliar when you are expecting the usual encounters, the brain responds to the shock as a potential threat, inducing fear. When the brain enters a what-if scenario, many things tend to happen. The first being exaggerated, catastrophic thoughts. These being, what is this? What does it want? And most terrifyingly, what is it capable of? These questions further induced anxiety and stress amongst the ancients. Because of this, it is clear and evident why the ancient people began to fabricate stories. After all, experiencing new, unknown things is certainly something the ancient people encountered. It is a strong element in how things could have gotten carried away. But what about the things that were not physical? What about the things that not everyone could see? The first fears weren't only things we saw. They were things we heard. Footsteps with no shape. Breathing without a body. A branch snapping where nothing should be. You can close your eyes. You can't close your ears. A sound without a source is more terrifying than any creature with a face. Now imagine dreaming without knowing what a dream is. Nightmares weren't stories. They were experiences. Shadows at the edge of vision, pressure on the chest, a presence you couldn't quite escape. If you can't wake yourself and your body won't move, how do you know it isn't real? Though there is no written documentation from prehistoric times describing sleep paralysis, it is almost certain that it occurred. Sleep paralysis happens when the brain wakes from REM sleep while the body remains immobilized. And REM sleep is universal, biological, ancient. Our prehistoric ancestors dreamed, just as we do. But they had no language for it, no science, no explanation. What they experienced existed only as terror, a predator with no body, a threat with no teeth, something that hunted from within the dark of the mind. As the human brain developed beyond pure survival, a new fear emerged: death. Between 40,000 and 10,000 BCE, archaeological evidence shows that humans began burying their dead with intention. Jewelry made from shells and mammoth ivory, antlers, dolls, fox teeth pendants, and weighted clothing. These were not random. They suggest belief, a journey, a continuation. And with that belief came a terrifying question: where did they go? And most importantly, could they come back? This is where the earliest spirits are born. Not monsters yet, but presences. The dead who do not stay gone. As stated previously, there is no written evidence for centuries on paranormal experiences, sleep paralysis, or mythical creatures. It wasn't until the more modern ancient civilizations came to be that such experiences were documented. The earliest paranormal encounter was written on a tablet in 1500 BCE by a man named Pliny the Younger. Pliny claimed that the spirit of a bearded old man in chains haunted his home in Athens, Greece. Shortly after this, the Old Testament tells the story of a witch named Endor, who summoned the prophet Samuel for King Saul in approximately 1011 BCE. Ghosts are also referenced in many ancient works, such as Homer's Odyssey, that was written in approximately the 8th century BCE. In this work, Odysseus speaks to many ghosts who give him advice and bring him to many revelations. Ghosts are referenced once again in Plautus's play Mostellaria, which was written in around 200 BCE. In this work, the first ever haunted house is referenced. Now, with these facts considered, it is clear that our ancient ancestors believed in what they wrote or what they saw. In my personal belief, there is always a source to how stories such as these came to be. They did not just happen out of the blue. They came from real experiences. Across early cultures, one fear begins to repeat. A being that comes at night. One that haunts the shadows of the dark and the mind. One that sits on the chest. And one that steals breath. Thousands of years later, we give it names. The night hag, the Mara in Scandinavia, the Lilitu in Mesopotamia, the old hag in early European folklore. Different cultures, same experience. Long before demons had names, humans feared something that watched them while they slept. Tonight, we talked about fear. Not the kind in movies, not the kind we laugh about after the lights come back on, but the older kind. The kind that existed before stories, before explanations, before comfort. There was a time when the night did not belong to us, when darkness meant uncertainty, when silence meant danger, when every sound carried meaning. Our ancestors didn't fear the dark because they were irrational. They feared it because they were paying attention. Every instinct we still carry, the feeling of being watched, the tension in a quiet hallway, the way your body reacts before your thoughts, was once useful. It kept someone alive, and that means something important. Fear is not a flaw in the human mind. It is a memory. We inherited it, passed down not through language, but through survival. Generation after generation of humans lived long enough to have children because they listened when something felt wrong, because they trusted a shadow they didn't understand, because they left when the forest grew too quiet, because they woke up in the night and did not fall back asleep. But something changed. The world became safer. We built walls, we lit streets, we named animals, we learned patterns. The dark slowly stopped hunting us, and yet the feeling never left. So we did something uniquely human. We gave fear a shape. We turned instinct into narrative. We made stories, not because we wanted to scare ourselves, but because we needed somewhere to put what we were still feeling. The mind does not like unanswered alarms. If your body reacts, your thoughts must explain it. And when explanation fails, imagination begins. This is where monsters were born. Not from madness, not from ignorance, from interpretation. A shadow becomes a watcher. A sound becomes footsteps. A dream becomes a visitor. The experience is real. It's the explanation that changes. Across the world, people who never met, who never shared language, culture, or geography began describing the same kinds of beings. Night visitors, whisperers, shapeshifters, tricksters, guardians, hunters. Different names, yet strangely similar forms. Because mythology was never just entertainment, it was humanity's first attempt at psychology. Myths gave structure to fear. They allowed people to say, "This is what you felt." And more importantly, you are not alone in feeling it. The creature mattered less than what it explained. A god explained thunder. A spirit explained dreams. A demon explained paralysis. A ghost explained grief. Mythology was not created because people were foolish. It was created because people were observant. They noticed something inside themselves, and they needed language for it. Even now, we still do this. We know what sleep paralysis is. We know what anxiety is. We know what intrusive thoughts are. But the experience still feels personal. Because knowledge satisfies the mind, but it doesn't always calm the body. And the body is older. Somewhere inside you is a part that still lives near a fire. A part that listens to the wind and tries to understand it. A part that wonders if silence means safety or warning. You are not imagining fear. You are remembering it. Next time, we begin to give that memory names. We move from instinct to mythology, from unnamed shapes in the dark to beings with identities, motives, and stories. We will meet the figures our ancestors created to explain the unexplainable, the watchers, the tricksters, the night visitors, and the guardians. We have only just scratched the surface. Because once humans begin telling stories about fear, fear began telling stories about us. And once fear has a name, it never truly disappears. It just waits for someone to remember it. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Cryptic Mind podcast. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, and leave a review. Please follow me on social media, all of which I have linked in my bio wherever you are listening. See you next week.